Ever wonder what it takes to make a busy airport run smoothly? I mean, we see the long lines and the crowded terminals, the occasional scramble for a last-minute coffee. But have you ever thought about the planning that goes into it all?
It's incredible, isn't it?
Today, we're diving deep into the International Air Transport Association's Airport Development Reference Manual.
Oh, the ADRM.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate playbook for anyone involved in designing and expanding airports.
You can think of it as the airport's blueprint for the future. It's full of best practices, guidelines used by industry professionals all over the world.
I know what you might be thinking. A manual on airport planning. Sounds a bit dry, right?
Maybe a little.
But trust me, this thing is surprisingly fascinating. It's like peeking behind the curtain at a magic show. Only instead of illusions, it's about moving millions of people efficiently and hopefully with a bit less stress.
One of the biggest challenges for airport planners is actually trying to predict the future.
Really?
Imagine trying to estimate how many passengers will be flying 10, 20 years from now.
Oh, wow.
That's what this manual tackles head on.
So they have a crystal ball hidden away somewhere in an airport control tower. I've always wanted to see one of those.
It's not magic, but it's close. They use something called forecasting, which involves analyzing historical data like passenger numbers and economic trends. But here's where it gets really interesting. They also look at things like airline alliances.
Airline alliances, like when airlines team up to offer connecting flights.
Exactly. Let's say two airlines form a new partnership. This could lead to a sudden increase in passengers transferring through a specific airport. The manual encourages planners to anticipate these changes and design flexible spaces that can handle the surge.
Wow. So they're not just looking at past trends, they're anticipating future changes too.
Yeah,
That's some serious strategic thinking.
absolutely. And this brings us to the concept of the airport's master plan, a roadmap for an airport's evolution. It's a comprehensive document that addresses everything from runway capacity to passenger flow, noise pollution, and even something as detailed as waste management.
I'm starting to see why this manual is so important. They're not just thinking about how the airport operates today, but how it will grow and adapt in the years to come.
Precisely. And one of the key aspects of that adaptation is accommodating different types of travelers. Think about it. You have families with young children, business travelers on tight schedules, passengers with disabilities, each with their own unique needs.
So how on earth do they design an airport that works well for everyone?
That's where the master plan comes in. It pushes planners to consider those different needs and come up with creative solutions. For example, have you ever noticed how some airports have those moving walkways that seem to go on forever?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always tempted to have a little race with my fellow passengers.
Well, those walkways are strategically placed. It's not just about saving you a few minutes of walking. It's about ensuring that people with mobility issues, families with heavy strollers, or even someone rushing to catch a connecting flight can navigate the airport with as little difficulty as possible.
I never realized there was so much strategy behind something as simple as a moving walkway. What else did they pack into this master plan?
It also delves into the nitty-gritty of terminal layouts. There are several basic designs like pier, satellite, and linear layouts, and each has its own pros and cons when it comes to efficiency, passenger flow, and even maximizing revenue from shops and restaurants.
Hold on, shops and restaurants. Are you telling me that where they decide to put the Starbucks was carefully planned out in this manual?
You better believe it. But we'll get into the fascinating world of airport concessions a little later. First, let's talk about another critical aspect of the master plan, and one that's particularly relevant today: sustainability.
Okay, now this is something I'm really curious about. Airports are massive energy consumers and can have a significant environmental impact. How do they even begin to address that?
It's a huge challenge, but this manual takes a comprehensive approach. It encourages planners to think about reducing emissions from aircraft and ground vehicles, managing noise pollution, using sustainable building materials, and even,
Wait for it. Protecting wildlife.
you caught me, wildlife control. It might sound funny, but it's a serious issue.
Okay, I get it. Bird strikes are a real danger. But what do they suggest, besides those brave border collies I've seen patrolling the runways?
That's one approach, but it goes deeper. The manual talks about habitat management, understanding local bird migration patterns, even designing the airport in a way that discourages wildlife from nesting nearby. Think of it like this. You wouldn't put a bird feeder right next to a busy highway, would you?
That's one way to put it. It's interesting, we often picture airports as these concrete jungles, but this manual really challenges that view.
It's true. It pushes for a more holistic view. The goal is to blend the airport with the environment as much as possible.
So it's not just about minimizing negative impacts, it's about actually creating a positive relationship between the airport and its surroundings.
You got it. The manual even talks about incorporating green spaces into the design, using natural light in the terminals, and even restoring nearby habitats that might have been disrupted during construction. It's about recognizing that airports are part of a larger ecosystem, not separate from it.
That's a pretty amazing shift in perspective. It makes you think differently about those patches of trees you sometimes see around airports. They're not just there for decoration.
Exactly. They can be part of a carefully planned strategy to promote biodiversity and create a more sustainable airport environment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here: forecasting, master planning, sustainability. But what about the part of the airport experience we're all familiar with? Navigating those sometimes confusing terminals.
Ah, yes. The art of getting from security to your gate with all your luggage, sanity intact,
Hmm.
and maybe a snack along the way. The manual actually dedicates a surprising amount of space to this.
Let me guess. It's not just about making sure the signs are pointing in the right direction.
Nope. Remember those different terminal layouts we talked about earlier?
Mm.
Pier, satellite, linear? Well, each one presents its own challenges when it comes to passenger flow.
Hold on, back up a bit. What exactly are pier, satellite, and linear layouts?
Okay, imagine you're looking at an airport from above. A pier layout has a central building with long corridors or piers extending out,
Hmm.
kind of like fingers. This makes it easy to get to gates, but can mean a lot of walking. A satellite layout has a central building with separate terminals connected by walkways or a train. This is great for spreading things out, but can be tricky if you have a tight connection.
So it's all about trade-offs.
Exactly. And then there's the linear layout, where the terminals are arranged in a straight line. This one can be efficient for getting people from check-in to security, but can get crowded if the airport's particularly busy.
And this manual, this airport Bible, it helps planners decide which layout is best for their particular needs.
You got it. It's about considering factors like the airport's size, passenger volume, and even the types of aircraft that will be using it. Think about it. A smaller airport with mostly domestic flights might do just fine with a linear layout, while a major international hub with lots of connecting passengers might be better suited to a satellite or pier design.
I'm starting to see how much goes into even the seemingly simplest decisions. This is reminding me of a time I got totally turned around at that massive airport, and well, I won't name names. Let's just say it involved a lot of frantic running and a near miss with my departure gate.
We've all been there. And that's exactly why those passenger flow principles in the manual are so important. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about designing spaces that are intuitive and easy to navigate, even when you're stressed or in a hurry.
It's like they're trying to take the stress out of travel, one well-placed sign at a time.
That's the dream, isn't it? And the manual even talks about going beyond just the basics, using things like lighting, color schemes, and even artwork to create a more calming and pleasant experience.
Now that you mention it, I have noticed that some airports have started to feel more like shopping malls or even art galleries than sterile transportation hubs.
Exactly. It's all part of creating a more enjoyable and less stressful experience for passengers, even if it's just a subconscious thing. But there's one more aspect of passenger experience that we haven't touched on yet, and it's a big one: concessions.
Ah, yes. The shops, the restaurants, the ever-tempting duty-free stores. You're telling me there's a whole section in this manual on where to put the best coffee shop.
You know it. This isn't just about satisfying your caffeine cravings, though. The placement of concessions is a surprisingly strategic part of airport design.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Spill the beans. How does a strategically placed coffee shop make my airport experience better?
Think about it this way. You've just gotten through security, maybe you're a little frazzled and you have some time before your flight. What do you do?
In my case, I start looking for the nearest coffee shop, preferably one with comfortable chairs and a decent Wi-Fi connection.
Exactly. The manual recognizes that passengers behave in predictable ways and encourages planners to take advantage of those patterns.
You mean they're manipulating us?
Not exactly. It's more about understanding passenger flow and using that knowledge to create a more enjoyable and convenient experience. Let's say you're designing a terminal with a long walking distance between security and the gates.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Long corridor, moving walkway, the works.
That's the one. Now, wouldn't it make sense to strategically place a few coffee shops or restaurants along that route? Maybe even a newsstand or a bookstore, so passengers have something to break up the monotony.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's not just about maximizing profits for the airport, it's about making that journey to the gate a little less boring.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just convenience. The manual also emphasizes the importance of offering a diverse range of concessions that cater to the needs of all travelers. So you're not just going to find overpriced fast food and souvenir shops, hopefully.
So we're talking healthy options, maybe some local specialties, maybe even a bookstore that's not just selling bestsellers.
You're catching on. It's about recognizing that passengers are a diverse group with diverse needs, and that's reflected in the concessions they offer.
This is blowing my mind. I never realized how much thought went into every little detail of the airport experience. But I have to ask, with all this talk about planning for the future, what happens when those plans are disrupted? What about those unexpected events that throw everything off course?
That's where things get really interesting, and where the Airport Development Reference Manual proves its worth once again. It has a whole section dedicated to.
So we were talking about curveballs. You know those unexpected events that make airport planning a bit like a high-stakes game of chess against Mother Nature, or maybe just a really unpredictable suitcase carousel.
Exactly. Things like severe weather events,
Oh, right.
global pandemics,
Yeah.
even economic downturns. They can all throw a wrench into the best laid plans.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this manual has some advice for dealing with those wrenches.
You bet. It stresses the importance of building flexibility and resilience into the airport's design and operations.
Okay.
This means having contingency plans for everything from rerouting flights during a snowstorm to managing passenger flow during periods of heightened security.
It's like they're always thinking one step ahead, anticipating problems before they even arise.
Precisely. And it's not just about reacting to immediate crises. The manual also emphasizes the importance of adapting to long-term changes in the aviation industry.
Like how technology is changing the way we travel. I mean, I remember when checking in for a flight involved a lot of standing in line and handing over a paper ticket. Now I can do it all from my phone while sipping my coffee.
It's amazing how much has changed, even in the last decade. And this manual encourages planners to embrace those changes, to anticipate the technologies and trends that will shape the future of air travel.
So we're talking about things like biometrics for security, autonomous vehicles for getting around the airport, maybe even robot luggage handlers who never accidentally send your suitcase to the wrong continent.
Okay, the robot luggage handlers might be a few years off, but you're right. It's about designing airports that can evolve with the times, incorporating new technologies, and adapting to changing passenger expectations.
This has been an incredible journey behind the scenes of airport planning. But there's one big question we haven't addressed yet. Who actually pays for all of this? Because I'm guessing all those moving walkways, sustainable design features, and carefully placed coffee shops don't come cheap.
You're right. Airports are expensive undertakings. This manual dedicates an entire section to the financial side of things, and it's not just about balancing the books.
Let me guess, they're looking at the bigger picture, the long-term economic impact of airport development.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that airports aren't just transportation hubs. They're economic engines, generating jobs, attracting businesses, and boosting tourism.
So they're looking at it as an investment, not just an expense.
Precisely. The manual talks about the importance of conducting thorough feasibility studies, exploring different funding models, and even looking at the potential for public-private partnerships. It's about ensuring that airport development makes financial sense, both for the airport itself and for the community it serves.
It's amazing to think about all the factors that have to be considered, from predicting passenger traffic years in advance to incorporating sustainable design, and even anticipating future technologies. It's like orchestrating a symphony with so many different instruments playing in harmony.
That's a great analogy. And when it all comes together, when the planes are taking off and landing on time, when passengers are moving through the airport smoothly, and when the environmental impact is minimized, it's a beautiful thing to see.
It really makes you appreciate the next time you're at an airport that there's a whole lot more going on behind the scenes than you might realize.
That's why I love this manual. It's a reminder that even in something as seemingly mundane as airport planning, there's room for innovation, ingenuity, and a commitment to creating a better experience for everyone.
Well, I think we've successfully navigated the runway of knowledge on this deep dive into the Airport Development Reference Manual. It's been eye-opening, to say the least.
Absolutely. And for those listening, we hope you'll see airports in a new light next time you travel.
Safe travels, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.